What do you think? Because you mentioned in the piece of Trump's achievements. So tell me what you think those achievements have been and were.
Well, look, his achievements are mixed and incomplete, even by the standards of a first term. I think that's due overwhelmingly to internal, external, really the total opposition of every power center in society, except arguably 1/3 of his White House that was on his side. Everything else was against him. And also to the, what I think I charitably described as subcompetence of elements of the administration before,
Mm-hmm.
that just turns out in the final analysis, look, that one of the things that many people said, including I knew, you know, the presidency is not an entry level job. Having never been in electoral politics before, it's going to be hard to govern, especially when you're governing against the system, against the consensus. And it turns out that that was true. And lots of things that might otherwise have gotten done didn't get done in part because of that. But I still think that's a minority cause that had, let's say you can imagine you could build a sort of presidential candidate in speech who has 30 years experience in electoral politics, has been a governor, knows everybody, knows how all the levers of power work, is the greatest bureaucratic infighter of all time, but put him into the White House in 2017 with Trump's agenda, the world is still going to line up against him and make it really hard to get stuff done. And probably he would have had that imaginary president would have had a better first term, but it would have still been really hard. So as to actual accomplishments, I think he really did make some progress on immigration. All of that's going to be given away now.
Well, isn't that the point, that he could have actually gotten a real legislative achievement if that it was on the table for him, but he walked away from it? He could have got full funding of his own border wall if he had compromised a little bit on DACA.
I doubt
that in the first.
I doubt that.
Okay.
I don't think he could have gotten it. I think that was too important to his opponents that not to give him something on that. To me,
but they basically did, didn't they?
They basically did. Bannon was right about the following: don't start with the traditional GOP, repeal Obamacare and then tax cuts. Start with infrastructure.
So why didn't he?
And see if I think he didn't because he got talked out of it by, and this is, you have to place this at the feet of Trump himself and no one else. He let himself get talked out of it by Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell and by others within his own administration.
See, this is what I don't understand. If you really did believe that he was elected to, for example, curtail immigration sharply and curtail illegal immigration, rather, sharply, build the wall, turn towards a protectionist foreign policy and withdraw us from various troubled spots, which when I look back at him, I think those are some of the keynotes that he won the election on. As soon as he wins the election, he just drops it entirely, all of it.
No, that's not true. He, in a way, you could say it's worse than that. He never dropped it entirely, but he would wax enthusiastic about it and then pull back and do some other things and so on. But look, one of the things that I witnessed firsthand is Trump is, that I think people give him no credit for, is he's persuadable. So he would have an idea, I want to do X, and he would listen to people around him and they would say, Mr. President, we don't think this is a good idea and you shouldn't because of Y and Z and these other factors. And he let himself get talked out of things all the time, sometimes for better, but sometimes for ill. And sometimes he would let himself get talked out of something but not have his heart in it and still want to do what he originally wanted to do and then consistently come back to it. So that's why this administration was in part kind of a roller coaster where Trump would wax Trumpian for a time and then he would seem like a standard issue Chamber of Commerce Republican from 1985, and then he would be Trump again. And
I just don't see any of the substantive.
I
just don't see any substantive achievements on what he called his agenda. I mean, if you take the wall, for example, which was probably one of the most important parts of his campaign. It's absolutely risible what he got done. I mean, it was absolutely pathetic. And he didn't get anyone else to pay for it. And in fact, he didn't even get the Congress to pay for it. He had to actually create and announce a fake national emergency to move congressional funds from one place to another against the Constitution. So that's how incompetent he was. I mean, that's how bad it was. He couldn't even get his signature proposal
his signature proposal is opposed by every powerful power center commanding height in this society, in and out of government.
He had both houses of Congress. He had a court
Yeah.
that wouldn't have struck it down, and he decided he couldn't give a shit, really, and didn't do it.
No, I just don't see it that way at all. First of all, he had both houses of Congress only nominally, run by a party that doesn't want the wall, that is in hock to its business interests, that don't want the wall, that don't want any kind of immigration restriction or employment enforcement at all, and that undermined him at every turn and tried to constantly take his attention away from it. Now, again, it's on him that he didn't just stand up to them and say, "No, this is what I ran on. This is what I want to do. I'm gonna you're either going to come along with me or I'm going to run against you while I am president the same way I ran against you when I was a candidate." He didn't do that. He thought, all right, I'm here now. It's time to govern. I'm sure Paul and Mitch have my best interests at heart or something, or we can make a deal. And
do you think anyone in public life
had Congress, in the sense that he had a majority in Congress that was willing to go along with his immigration agenda, and he's the one who flubbed it? He may have flubbed it too, but in part because Congress was absolutely unwilling to go along with his immigration agenda.
It's just
he didn't fight
them. It's just remarkable to me that he wouldn't fight them. And the other if you are in favor of immigration reform, if you're in favor of controlling illegal immigration, of restricting legal immigration in the future, if you have that kind of argument, has any figure in public life discredited that position more than Donald J. Trump in the eyes and minds of the majority of people in this country?
I don't see it that way at all. I think the people who hate him over his immigration stance never believed in that stance in the first place. Donald Trump is to the contrary. Immigration has been a priority for a pretty big subset of voters. Lots of Republicans and even a non-trivial number of Democrats from the sort of union side, that no politician or only fringe politicians who didn't get anywhere spoke to. And he came along. It was the proverbial $100 bill on the sidewalk, and he picked up that nobody else picked up,
and stigmatized it forever by his rhetoric, by the cruelty of some of the policies that he expanded, by the viciousness of his rhetoric. I mean, what we've seen is a shift in public opinion under Trump, way to be more pro-immigration and anti-control of immigration. That may change, but if I look substantively, he got almost nothing substantively passed. And he also stigmatized the whole concept and argument for reducing legal immigration.
He got nothing substantively passed because no Congress, not even a Republican Congress, was ever going to give him what he wanted legislatively on immigration or any part of it. I'm not aware of polling that shows that he uniquely stigmatized the issue, or that the American people have somehow become a lot more pro-immigration. But if you've seen stuff that I haven't seen, I'll take a look. I know what's going to happen, though. We have an administration in power now that's going to reverse everything Trump was trying to do and put in place probably the laxest immigration regime in well over a century. We'll see how well that goes over in the court of public opinion.
I have to understand, as you probably do, I'm not hostile to the basic argument about the policy. I've become more persuaded by it over time. But to channel Ann Coulter, there is no one that makes her angrier than Trump on this question because of the way he let everybody down.